Hi, good afternoon. We bring you excerpts from Erik ten Hag's presser and his claims that United's hierarchy supports him. There you go. You have to climb a mountain, and this is top football, and sometimes you have to face challenges, and sometimes it goes up, sometimes goes down, but I'm sure we will make it a success, as we did the last 2 seasons. We make it success, and I think we are in a direction underneath. I see the good things, I see underneath, I see good patterns, and I see also the good stats, what confirms that we are in a good direction. But of course the ranking is not lying, and we are where we are, and that's not good enough. Obviously you can see positives, but there's always a lot of noise around your position. Certainly the start of this international break, did you feel the need to seek any assurances about your position? No, and the noise is only coming from the media, from you guys, for some of you. And let's say this, not all of you, but some of you bringing up stories, creating fairy tales, making the noise, bringing lies, because I know we are on one page in this group. I told this before the break. I told several journalists, probably they didn't believe me because I see the reports. But internal in the club, it's quiet. Of course, we are discussing in the position where we are, and that we are unhappy with the position where we are, and how we have to turn the corner, and what has to happen. And so what should be the strategy to turn this corner? But ultimately we are quiet, we are composed, we stay where we are, we stick to the plan, and we are very convinced we will make it success. It doesn't help when you get injuries, and you had to deal with a lot last season. So what's the situation with Mazraoui, Mainu and Maguire, and their timescales with them? They will not help, that's for sure. And you need players available to perform. So that is one point we have to change in this club. But then to this point actual is that Kobbie and Harry, they are out for a couple of weeks. And Mazraoui, it's a good news, he faced an illness, but he returned on the training pitch and he's available for selection for tomorrow. Hi Erik, just to ask you, away from Manchester United, you saw Thomas Tuchel come in as the England manager. You faced him twice last season as a Bayern Munich head coach. What do you make of that appointment? I think very good choice from the FA. He's a top-class manager. Proved himself creating top teams, creating teams who win, and England didn't win since 1966. So I think it's a very good appointment to get a win, because England has world-class players, make it a team, and they have the opportunity to win big championships, the Euros or the World Cup. Erik, you've had some problems at left back for a while because of injuries and unavailabilities. Can you just say, what is the situation with Shaw and Tyler Malaysia? Are they going to be back anytime soon? Yeah, they are back, but we can't force their return, and we have to do it very careful, because also we don't want to have a return and then quickly drop out. So we do it very careful, but of course we hope to do it as soon as possible, because this team needs a left full back. That's also for sure. Christian Eriksen, you signed him from Brentford. He's become a really important figure again this season, when it looked like perhaps his career might have been winding down slightly. What's the key to the change that he's now become so important pretty much every week? He faced some injuries in the first year, but then already he was very important, and as well as last season, but then also coming up Kobbie, but then lately, yeah, he proved himself in the team and together with Kobbie, and it can be a very good couple. Unlucky now it's fell apart for the coming weeks. But it's clear he has a good season. So far he's important for the team with his contribution in linking key passes, be creative, composed and calm, and yeah, very happy with his performances so far in the season. Erik, how much have you got to try and take pressure off the players? Obviously, if you're in 14 every game, is if you lose it, it's a disaster, because the club's not in a great position. But also Benny McCarthy said that you see a lot last season players doing well in training, and then on a match day, it didn't happen, which presumably is to do with pressure as well. How much have you got to take that off the player? I think the players do well. We won last season, maybe you forgot. And of course, when we face problems, then also sometimes we have to line up teams who were not in the right balance, and because the players were not available. But I think in general, and the players do, and perform well. And what we see now, yeah, we have to start scoring in that part, but of course it's the most important part of football. If you want to win games, you have to score goals. And in that part, we have to improve, and we are entering the final third. We are entering the box. We are coming in good positions to score, and now we have to step up the last step, but the most important step to net. Hello there, this is some story, isn't it? We now know who Gareth Southgate's full-time successor is. Let's get right into it. Rob Dawson is here. He is totally across this story. Rob, this seems to have escalated very quickly. I mean, yesterday people were talking about Pep Guardiola, could England persuade him, etc, and now it's Thomas Tuchel. How's it happened? Yeah, well, look, The people I was speaking to yesterday poured a little bit of cold water on the Pep Guardiola story. My understanding there was that, yes, the FA made a very initial approach to him last July, so a few days after Gareth Southgate had resigned, as they did a number of managers at the time. Very tentative just to test the waters, and they weren't giving anything in terms of encouragement, shall we say, from the Guardiola camp, and that's the only contact they had. So there was contact, which is quite why the media reported the story as they did, but I don't think the FA ever thought it was going to happen. I think from an FA perspective, from the big bosses, it would have been the dream ticket to appoint Pep Guardiola, the best manager of his generation without a doubt. Somebody who would give England every chance of winning a major trophy, but I don't think the FA bosses ever thought it was going to happen, so they looked elsewhere. Why has it happened now? Because you're right, it's happened very, very quickly. I think what's happened with Lee Carsley in this international break has focused the minds and brought the FA's plans forward quite simply. England lost to Greece in a pretty abject fashion 2-1 when it could have been 4-1, and Lee Carsley, in truth, great coach that he is, lovely guy as he is, struggled, I think, with the media duties and some mixed messaging coming back from him, so I think that's when the FA thought right, enough's enough. We thought about Lee Carsley as an option. It's not going to work, we need to move forward here. Thomas Tuchel was always on their short list of possible candidates, and they've accelerated it and moved very quickly. He's out of work, having left Bayern Munich in May, so was available, and clearly the negotiations have gone pretty quickly and pretty effectively to get to a point where here we are now with a news conference scheduled for lunchtime at Wembley tomorrow to confirm that the man on your screen, Thomas Tuchel, the former Chelsea, Paris Saint-Germain and Bayern Munich manager, is now the England manager, and I don't think even 24 hours ago we thought that was likely. Rob, eyebrows will be raised, of course, with disappointment. He's German, is England's third non-English manager. Are you surprised that the Football Association have not gone for an English coach? And is it maybe a sad indictment, perhaps, of the lack of quality of English managers who could potentially do the job? I think there's an awful lot of people who will see it that way, Darmish. When we speak to the chief executive of the FA, Mark Bullingham, tomorrow, that will be a key question for him. Is appointing a German coach as the men's England manager an admission of failure for the FA, who are in charge of coach education in this country? Are we saying that too many young English coaches are not coming through and are good enough? Look, I can understand that argument, I can understand that point of view, but let's be honest, Graham Potter and Eddie Howe, two English people, two English managers who were on the FA shortlist, one of whom in Graham Potter is absolutely available and could have started the job tomorrow, were not even consulted for the role. Eddie Howe, of course, is in post at Newcastle, but with his situation there, the FA, you would have thought, might want to explore with a new football director at Newcastle whether that relationship was going to work and whether Eddie Howe might be available. The FA chose not to, so clearly employing a homegrown manager was not top of their wish list, and I think what Thomas Tuchel does provide is a track record of winning trophies, and you can't say that about Eddie Howe, you can't say that about Graham Potter. So the FA have decided that it's more important to get a winner in, somebody who in Tuchel's case is particularly good at winning knockout matches. He's proved that in all the cup competitions he's had in France, in Germany and in England with the hope of winning things. So I think it's very clear from this appointment that the priority is to get a manager who they think can win a major trophy for England, finally get them over the line after Gareth Southgate brought us so close to 2 European Championship finals and didn't quite manage to deliver a trophy. We know about the support of the England fans, and we saw that connection that Gareth Southgate built up certainly for the majority of his time in charge. Do you think there might be on that subject of nationality a pushback from some sections of the England support? I think there will be from some sections, but not all sections, and it's interesting that we're running a poll since we broke this news exclusively that Thomas Tuchel was the favourite to take over at lunchtime. There will be a backlash from some sections of the England support. There will be a backlash almost inevitably from some sections of the English media as well. Thomas Tuchel will have a hard time of it at times. We know he's a feisty character. We know he has a strong personality. He speaks his mind. He has fallen out with bosses at various clubs in the past. There will be plenty of people in the media who will be poke Thomas Tuchel with a stick, see if you can get him to react. Give us a good headline and there'll be some sections of the England support who will want him to fail without shadow of a doubt, so that's saying, look, proof that we should have had an English coach in charge of the England team, but the FA will have made a very sober and objective decision in considering all of those options, and they clearly think that the tactician, the type of football that he plays, this high-octane football as it's described with a high press, lots of attacking players on show, very positive on the front foot, played through the thirds very quickly. That's the sort of football they want to see this England team play, but ultimately the FA will be judged now, as Thomas Tuchel will, on whether the England men's team can deliver silverware. Rob, Thomas Tuchel has had issues, shall we say, with club hierarchies in the past. Very much so. These questions will be asked as well about how he's going to, let's say, get on with the FA's hierarchy. Do you think it's very different that he won't have to necessarily be dealing with directors and chief executives day in, day out like he might have had to have done if he was in a club job compared to the national job? That's a really good point, Darmush, and maybe yes, maybe that's the case, but I think what we don't know, and the big unknown here, is how Thomas Tuchel is going to adapt to being an international manager. He's never done it before, and we know it's a very different environment to club management. We're seeing, I think, a trend in modern football where the best coaches who take charge of national teams are specialists. They do the national job, and it's very, very different because look, Thomas Tuchel has always been able to, at Paris Saint-Germain, Bayern Munich and Chelsea, buy the talent that he needs to fill his squad and get it to play the way he wants. If he's struggling for a left back, he can go out and buy a left back. The clubs he's been at have had huge resources. Well, England have got a real dearth of left-footed defenders at the moment, and he can't just go out and buy somebody to solve that problem. He will also only see the players once in a blue moon, and this is something Gareth Southgate spoke about a lot. Look at Lee Carsley in this last international break. He tried to change the way England play, put all of those attacking players on show, and he said they'd only had pretty much 20 minutes on the training field to give it a go and prepare for that. There'd been 2 training sessions building up to that game. That'll be very different for Thomas Tuchel. How will he adapt to that lack of time, that lack of contact with the players? Clearly the FA think he's going to adapt well, and it'll suit him, but I think the pudding is in the eating. We'll see how that develops in his time as England manager. One man he has already worked with is the England captain Harry Kane. I'll get your thoughts on that in a second, but first of all, Kane himself has been speaking about Tuchel before this news came out this evening. Let's hear what he had to say. Well, to be honest, I don't know. I haven't been told anything, so yeah, until it's announced, obviously I can't really comment, but we have to wait and see. Obviously, I know Thomas well from last year and fantastic coach, fantastic person, so I'm sure the guys at the FA will contact me when they know more about it. Yeah, and that was just to repeat before the news that Rob brought us about half an hour ago was made public. Interesting hearing him say that, he knows him from last season at Bayern Munich. He scored a lot of goals under him, and at a time when people are just starting to ask questions about Kane's plays in this England team, how significant could this appointment for him be? Hugely significant for the England captain, and that little clip we played for him there, it made me feel like the England captain knew that Thomas Tuchel was about to sign a contract to become the new England manager. Listen, Harry Kane is the epitome of a brilliant diplomat. He would not have been drawn to say that I don't think if he didn't know it was a fait accompli that his former club manager at Bayern Munich was about to be his new national coach at England. But yeah, it's a huge boost for Harry Kane.
Let's talk Manchester City, Charlie. I'll come to you, the piece by Jacob Steinberg there in The Guardian. City to target Ruben Amorim if Guardiola exits in the summer. How good a fit could that be? How likely do you see that as happening? Well, he's a huge ally of Hugo Viana, who is going to join from Sporting to City as their sporting director in the summer. You can see why City are having to put together a plan, because Guardiola continues to be pretty vague, doesn't he, on his future, saying, anything can happen. I still think there's a chance that he will stay Guardiola for at least one more season. But City don't know that. So Amorim could be an obvious choice. Was close at one stage, it seemed, to coming to the Premier League for West Ham. But yeah, the Viana going to City I think changes things a bit. But equally, you can see why Manchester City ultimately just be desperate to keep hold of Pep Guardiola for just one more season. Huge act to follow, isn't it, after 8+ years? Miguel, what's your take on Ruben Amorim? I think he was linked to Liverpool previously as well. Could he be the man, if anyone is, to follow Pep Guardiola? Yeah, again, before Arne Slot, he was considered by Liverpool quite close to Slot, actually. In fact, around February or March, people actually thought that would maybe be the more likely appointment. So he has that pedigree. A lot of top clubs like him. He would kind of, I suppose, be a continuation, but also maybe just not necessarily an evolution. But you bring it on from Guardiola in something slightly different tactically. Of course, weighing over this is the hearing as well. City obviously absolutely protest their innocence, so they will continue with business as usual. But depending on how that goes, it could change everything. But for the moment, yeah, obviously Amorim is just because of how he's seen in the game. He's a very obvious choice to potentially succeed Guardiola, especially as Charlie said there, with someone close to him like Viana in charge.
It's always interesting, but extra interesting because it's two new managers facing each other, Nolan, for the first time. Enzo Maresca going to the home of Arne Slot. What kind of game do you think this will be? Really good. Fascinating. We're going to learn a ton from both of these sides. Two managers have come into their clubs done really well. The players were taking on board a different tactical approach, strategy really well. Great. I think we want to see Chelsea play the highest level. We certainly want to see Arne Slot's kind of tactics and stuff at Anfield against Chelsea and see how it matches out. But I've loved both teams. Big stories for me so far this season of how these new guys have gone in and had an immediate impact and a positive one. But particularly for Liverpool, we wanted to see some tougher games. We're going to see now over the next few weeks what they're really all about. Who's impressed you more, Maresca or Slot? Well, I think given the job, I think Maresca. Given what a kind of difficult situation Chelsea was, more players, loads of squad. Change that. Put some players out on loan. Focus in on 11 now, which almost picks itself with really good backup, by the way. Really good backup they got from the market. I think he's done a better job in comparing the two of them. Liverpool goalkeeper Alisson, who I know you think is the best, if not one of the best goalkeepers in the league, is out tomorrow. How big a problem? It's a problem. Kelleher has been fantastic. He could be a number one in the Premier League. He's done it pretty often for Liverpool and hasn't let them down. But the fact of the matter is Alisson's a monster. He's just so good. His presence is so big for this team. So it's a miss. I think it's a miss in the game. But I also have, you asked Robbie about, and you asked me midweek, Maresca or Slot, like who's done better. It's so hard to make the case for which one has done better because they've both done brilliantly in different situations. I just look at Slot and I think following Klopp, who has all this gravitas and success, how do you come in and tactically change something different? He's done that. He's gotten a tune out of Gravenberch, who we've thought, maybe he's a squad player. He's been brilliant for them. But also the gravitas and the presence. To not be like Klopp but have your own, bring that fear factor to the players differently than Klopp did. I just think this game is going to be a real proper football match. It just shows you if the results are there, it doesn't half help the manager, a new manager, particularly at Anfield, particularly following Jurgen Klopp, to settle in nicely when the style is good, the attacking is there, Mo Salah's on great form. It's going to help anybody settle in. So he's done really well. Yeah, he's got some breathing space, hasn't he? And a honeymoon period. Will it end tomorrow for either one? We will see. Robbie and Tim, thank you very much for your company today. For more Premier League content from original series to live matches, head over to 1 Hour Sport. Right, so we know Carsley will take charge of the November internationals, but there are mixed messages surrounding the manager's job. Mark's back with us. This kind of sums it up, doesn't it? The question mark on the head. Where do we stand with Gareth Southgate's permanent successor? Well, I think the most important thing to point out here is that the FA are relaxed and they're taking their time, doing their due diligence. They're giving Lee Carsley the opportunity, and they just want to wait and see before making this big, huge decision. Well, there are 605 days until the World Cup. That's the next big tournament that England are taking part in. So actually, they've got plenty of time to make this decision and get it right. We know that Lee Carsley has been given 3 international camps. He's just coming towards the end of the second, and the FA just taking their time to review their options before they make their move. So Carsley said he's been given 3 international camps. He said that many times, hasn't he? England assessing their options. Could they be waiting for, a bigger name? Perhaps like Pep Guardiola. Roy Keane was adamant that that's the man that England should be going for, right? Yeah, go for Pep. That was what Roy Keane said on ITV last night. You have to say that if the England file wait, there could be very different candidates available, say, in March and April next year, compared to what's available now. We know that Thomas Tuchel, Graham Potter, Eddie Howe are all on their radar. However, they're yet to make moves as of yet for someone who they think could be the right person. This is what obviously Roy Keane says. Sky Sports pundit, go for Pep, the best man for the job. His trophy cabinet is laden with silverware. He knows how to get the job done. And also he can play with the style that the FA would require. Now, this is what he did say. The FA have to go after the right guy, whoever that is. Whether finances play a part in it, the FA have to get busy and find the right man. Go for Pep, go for the best. Pep's contract is up in the summer, which is quite interesting as well, because of course we know that he could sign an extension at Manchester City, but we know that there are changes happening at the club. We know that Tsiki Begiristain is leaving as well, the sporting director who's played a prominent role. But also Pep was on an Italian chat show last night and was asked about his future and of course links to England. And here's what he said: "Leaving City, it's not true. I haven't decided yet. And it is not even true that I will be the next England coach. If I decided to stay, I would say it. I don't know either. Anything can happen." So he's just left a little bit open-ended at the moment. He didn't completely rule himself out. Didn't say he wants the job. Anything can happen at 7:30 today. I'll be taking a look at last night's game in Finland, giving the verdict on England's performance in the 3-1 victory. Well, victory for England, but they're second to Greece in their Nations League group. Greece beat England 2-1 on Thursday and got the better of the Republic of Ireland in Athens to maintain their 100% winning record. I never felt Arsenal were in control at any point during the game. They felt really sluggish coming out of the blocks. They felt, for me, that they were coming off of international duty. That was the issue. It's like they didn't really have a lot of time to work together, and that was quite relevant to see. By just how they were second to everything, they didn't look like they were actually hungry to actually get a result. It felt like they'd probably get to Bournemouth and, sort of go through the motions at times. It felt like that's when Bournemouth smelt they can get something out of this game. Of course, the red card was a big change, in fact, in the game. Even before that, I thought they were sloppy, leggy, passive. Wasn't the Arsenal that we've been used to seeing this season? No, not at all. I actually said we've got great stats, guys. We're so lucky that we can ask them questions. I said to them after about 20 minutes, I said, I can't remember Arsenal giving the ball away this many times at this stage of a game in a long time. They were wasteful. No one was really getting hold of the ball. And it does make you think, and I really like Odegaard, and he gives Arsenal a sense of control, how much they missed him today. They miss Saka, because as soon as the ball goes out to him, something can happen. Raheem Sterling is obviously a right-footed player. He's playing on the right side. He's not got that same flow that Bukayo Saka offers you. Straight away, you look at that team sheet and think, right, we've got a real chance today. Let's get after this Arsenal side. Two of their biggest players aren't playing. That midfield was, I would say, functional today. There was no one that was going to give you that little bit of guile. And even when it went to 10 men, they obviously had the big Martinelli chance, but I didn't feel they had any ingredients to really unlock this Bournemouth side. And they just struggled all game. It was a really difficult evening for them. A lot of that is due to Bournemouth and how good they were. But I think Arsenal will be really disappointed. And Mikel Arteta, I can't wait to hear what he says, because obviously there's been a lot of conspiracy theories about the two previous sending-offs with Trossard and Declan Rice. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's obviously disappointed about this one, but they're going to miss a big player next week as well. Against Liverpool, of course.
Most would have liked an English coach, I think. Well, that's the general feeling I get from people I've spoken to in the game, and the general kind of viewpoint from the masses, it seems. But on the other hand, I think the game's diversifying all the time. It's someone who's right for the job, and he clearly has got a record that suggests he can do the job, and that's for sure. So I think that's just the way it is. I think results will be important for obvious reasons, but they always are if you're manager of England, I'm sure of that. How do you feel yourself about an Englishman not getting the opportunity? Well, I can only imagine there's a big process to go through. They mentioned approximately 10. I don't know how it's approximately, it's either 10 or not. I was quite intrigued by that. Anyway, out of the 10, I would imagine there has been some English-British coaches interviewed. I don't know for sure. I certainly wasn't. Not that they asked me. I'm just making it clear in case you want to ask. But no, I think they'll have gone through a heavy process, I would imagine, to get to where they've got to. With no English coach coming through now, do you think it's disheartening that the FA have gone for a non-British coach? I don't think it's disheartening, I think it's disheartening, I think it's just a reality of the modern game. Each pathway doesn't always lead to where you want it to. You can only suggest down the history, or certainly my history with the FA, in theory, the idea was to get English coaches, fast-track certain members if needs be, get them through the system, create that platform for coaches going into the system, and therefore managing the country. But it's changed so much, football management and the view of it. Now they've obviously looked at it differently. And at the end of the day, all of us want to win, inevitably. And I think that sometimes it sort of gets lost in modern football. It's almost like, yeah, but how are you going to do this? How are you going to do that? What about winning? So I don't think he'll be under any illusion, as manager. Forget about nationalities, he'll know that he's been put in there to try and win. Because Gareth did an amazing job, in my opinion, did a fantastic job. I mean, many different ways of his job with England. But we didn't win, so can we go on and take it to the next level? That would be his biggest challenge, beyond all the rest of the noise, is trying to win something. How do you think he will get on? We'll see. Plenty of very good managers have tried over the years, since 1966, and no one's quite done it. So we'll see. And you said you weren't involved in the process. Has there ever been a time when you have been involved in the process? No. Never been spoken to about the job. Is it the dream, the job, to play an English coach? I'm not sure dream is the right word for the England job. I think it's a respected job for the right reasons. As someone who's been in the English game all my life, player, coach, manager, of course, but I don't think it's a dream. I think, having spoke to a few England managers, it isn't necessarily a dream. I think it's a massively challenging job and changed over the years. But yeah, it's certainly something I think in some point of your career you'd like to have a look at, but it's certainly not my time now.